Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. So today I had a friend of mine ask me if I can sew up their work pants. So I'm going to show you guys how you can do this as well for yourselves. Now thing is, when you have jean material, jeans are woven. So you can see you've got threads going up and down this direction, and you can also see we've got threads going this direction as well. Now, when you go ahead and get started sewing, you want to make sure that you check what direction those threads are going in, because if you are stitching in a direction that is going to pull those threads out, what you're going to end up having is you'll have a seam, then you'll have a hole next to the seam that develops. So you want to make sure that you are have a good edge to sew on, as well as something that you're not going to be pulling what is woven out of its place, because you will get more holes in your work. Another thing, don't wash your clothes when you have holes in them. It makes it fray even more and it pulls those threads out. So you want to avoid that. So if you have dirty jeans, guess what? Keep them that way until you can get them sewn, because it will be harder for other people to repair those holes. So now that I've got my needle and I've got some thread handy, and I can already kind of tell what direction I'm wanting to sew this in. This fabric kind of shows me that I'm probably going to be okay sewing in this direction more so than sewing up and down. But I guess each hole is a little bit different in its frayed ability, so we're just going to do the best we can. Now there is a great material out there called Liquid Stitch. You can actually use that on the edges, and that will help kind of keep those frayed edges a little bit close together and kind of glued up. So then that will give you a solid edge to make your seam over the top of without having to worry about pulling those fibers like that out. So I'm going to go ahead and just take some of this Liquid Stitch, and I'm going to just start, I think, with this one over here. I'm just going to add that dab of basically fabric glue over those edges. I'm going to dab it, make sure it gets all in those fibers. This will be flexible as well, so that's kind of nice about it. Unlike something like super glue, which I have discovered, do not use super glue when you're trying to patch up a hole like this, because super glue, apparently on some fabrics, likes to smoke, and then it turns the fabric really brittle. So that's not good either. Alright, so I think I've got those edges kind of glued down. That looks alright. And I think I'm just going to, just examining this a minute, I think I'm going to tuck that on the inside there. So I want to have a nice smooth seam if I can. Boy, that's going to be a little bit difficult, because instead of having a clean cut, I've got kind of a square gap. So I'm going to have to goof with this just a little. Alright, so I've got my thread handy, and I'm sorry about the squeaking. I've got my fountain in the background, which is kind of liking to do its own little thing. And I'm going to go ahead and just put a stitch right here. Gonna go ahead and tie that off. Now again, because this is more of a square hole instead of a clean cut, I'm going to have to do a little bit of weaving these two edges together and make some long threads, because that's going to also help stabilize these two long edges. So I'll take the short edge, take my stitching, go this direction until I get back over to this corner, and then I will start my stitching across. So that's the plan anyway. Hopefully that's going to help stabilize some of those threads a little bit. Alright, going to the other short corner on the same side. And I'm sorry that my fountain's squeaky. Maybe I said that already. I don't know. I have a hard time sometimes trying to keep focused and showing you guys what I'm doing and telling you guys how you can do it for yourself. While I've got other things going on in the background that are kind of distracting. ADD, ADHD people, you know what I'm talking about. Alright, I'm just going to go ahead and just make some strands there because these are already ripped out, they're gone, and I need some kind of a structure that I can help stabilize the rest of the edges with. I don't want it so tight that I'm going to have puckers in my long edges here when I start sewing across. So I'm trying to keep the integrity of the fabric as much as I can. And see, this is what I was talking about when you have an edge that likes to pull across with a weaving, because you can sometimes get a hole next to it. But I'm not too bothered by this at the moment because I still have some other stuff I gotta do that will help kind of patch that over as well and give that some stability. And sewing this while the glue is still kind of damp, but drying also kind of helps too. Alright, got that. That looks pretty good. It looks about the same length. I am going to just come down and pull this edge up just a little bit more. I'm kind of almost doing a blanket stitch through here, but just kind of a modified one. I'm just going to pull that. Okay, that looks pretty good. They'll look about the same length. I'm going to go ahead, come over here, stay from the back to the back. There we go. Pull this up through here. And I think I'm going to need to do one more for this corner there. And come up here. Alright, I'm fairly happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and tie this off. And then I'll be back and show you guys what I'm going to do with those new stabilizing stitches right there that look kind of a mess. And we'll go from there. Okay, so got my needle rethreaded, and this is why I've got my stabilizing long threads here. This is going to be evident in why I put those there absolutely first. Because now, as I start pulling these two sides together, this area, these spots right here, these narrow areas, are going to try and pucker. Now, because I've already got the stabilizing stitches going across, that's hopefully going to keep those edges from buckling and doing this kind of a thing and still remaining straight. So that's the reason I put these stabilizing stitches in there. Also, these are going to help strengthen these edges here, and my stitch, as I'm coming down this way, will also help stabilize these edges here as well. So this is why we do some of those things. And you want to pay attention what direction your fabric is going to be woven in. And I think I'm going to start with this edge over here, and I'm going to go way out here. Again, because this is a square hole and not a clean one, I'm going to have to sew this just a little bit differently. But if you have an edge that you can sew together that's not square and it's just a straight clean cut, you can skip these stabilizing stitches as I've done here and just do this next part, which I am about to show you guys. Alright, so now I'm almost going to do like a figure 8 type of thing. I'm going to put my hand on the inside of my fabric because that way I don't end up sewing this part down to the back, because you can't fit your foot in there and put your pants on if your pants are literally sewn together. So we're just repairing holes, not sewing the legs together. Alright, so I'm just going to come up from the back, kind of like we're lacing a shoe. Come up from the back. And I'm going to do a figure 8. And I'm going to go in the very middle of my stabilizing stitches. And I'm going to come out the back here. So I'm just going to do figure 8s like that the whole way. So I go bottom to middle, and bottom to middle. I hope that makes sense. So I'll show you that again. Bottom to middle, and then bottom to middle. And this is going to leave a figure 8 type pattern. As I start pulling those stitches together, you can see how those edges are just starting to come together just a little bit. This area is wanting to pucker, so I can't pull it too tight at this moment. I got to make sure that those are all stabilized. So again, I got to come through the middle, come out the back. Oop, my thread wants to tangle on me. That does happen. All right. Now, middle to back on that other side. And make sure everything stays nice and clean as possible. I don't want to have any loops of thread. Just want to make sure everything stays nice and tight. All right, I'm kind of happy with that. Then go into the middle again. Come out there. I'm just going to keep weaving this back and forth, back and forth. Now, what's cool is because I have come in the middle here, that is going to basically loop these sides together. So that way I won't have to deal with any frayed spots. And again, that glue, that liquid stitch does help as well to keep those woven threads where they belong in your jeans, so you have something that is going to be a stabilizing structure to sew up the holes and repair those. So middle to back, middle to back. We're just going to go back and forth like this, all up and down the seam until we can get it completely all together. Whoop, I've got a little bit of a loop there. I can't tell which that is going to. Okay, there it is. We're going to just start gently pulling these together. I'm going to need to be mindful because I've already got a sort of a pucker there, but that pucker would be much worse if I didn't put those elongated stabilizing stitches in there. Right now I'm going to go middle to back here. I'm just going to kind of improvise this a bit because I definitely want to have that pucker staying down and hopefully seamless. So I'm just going to push my finger tip right there. I'm just going to come out this corner, going middle to back. And hopefully this is going to work out okay. Now I'm going to pretend that this is a middle because I've still got my center line that I'm going for, but I want to make sure I can get that pucker kind of out of my material. So I'm going to come in at my imaginary middle, come up through the back, and then I'm just going to press my finger into that corner right there, and I'm going to try and see if I can press that out of there. That's a little bit tricky, so just kind of going to do a little bit of a stitch here. Maybe I can get that corner to pull down and be nice and smooth. Checking my work. Alright, I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to go ahead and start doing some long stabilizing stitches again through the middle, going long ways again, just like I did when I started out. And again, if you have material that has a straight cut in it, you don't have to do this part that I'm doing right now. You can just do the figure eights going middle to back, middle to back. But I'm going to have to do this to help make sure the structure stays in place. I'm going to go ahead and just keep doing, this is basically a blanket stitch. I'm going to make sure I've got everything kind of tucked away, just like it needs to. And come out here. Now I'm going to go ahead and do that figure 8 stitching from the middle to back, because I want to make sure that these long threads, again, stabilizing factors for these corners, I want to make sure that those stay nice and tucked away in a tiny stitch, so that way they don't leave any loops like this from getting snagged on anything else. So I will continue doing that, and I'll see you in a few minutes and show you what we'll do very last. Alrighty, so I'm back. Now I've already gone and tied my last knot and cut all the ends. So now I have got basically a thread sewed patch there. I'm going to go ahead and put some liquid stitch over the top of that. I'm going to dab everything down, and that will help keep everything in place. Now on the back side of my fabric, or even on the top side, it's up to you, you can choose. You can put a small patch on the inside, and that will kind of help make sure that instead of your knot being pulled on, that you have a patch over it, so that way your thread or your jeans are going to pull on the patch and not the seam that you have just created when repairing a hole. So again, I hope this video was helpful, and if you liked these tips and tricks, you can come back for more adventures and videos later on. Bye now.